Hello everyone, Intuitive Coach Kevin here. Being guided today to talk about dealing with depression, despair, and powerlessness, and whether or not it's really okay to use anger to move out of it. This is one of those things, particularly again in the holiday season like we're talking about in the last video. There's a lot to get stirred up around this time of the year. We got family, we got work situations, we have financial situations sometimes, and there's a lot of emotions that we suppress throughout the year that will come up and get triggered, and often leading us into depression. And despair and powerlessness and grief, they're all at the bottom of the Abraham emotional scale, which most of you are, I think, familiar with. And if you're not, you can get it in the book Asking It Is Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks. But it's really the foundation of our internal guidance system. Learning to tune into the intuition that we have is emotionally based at first. And so tuning into the emotions tell you if the thoughts you're thinking are heading in the direction you want them to be or not. This is the, I've shown this before. I discovered, thanks to some feedback from some friends and clients who watch these videos, that Facebook actually is mirroring the video. I'll figure out a way to technologically fix that. But in the meantime, my holding up the emotional scale, it was backwards. So I made one that'll actually fit here in the correct direction. So hopefully you guys can actually see this now and read it in the proper direction. So the emotional scale is our guidance system. So up at the top is joy, knowing, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. And those are all the same frequency, just different contexts. And that's when you're connected to source. That's when you have guidance and clarity. And you can see as you move down near the bottom, that's when the really negative emotions kick in. And that's when you're really separated from yourself, from your higher self, or from your internal guidance. You can see all those the emotions that you feel down there at the bottom at number 22. That's as separated as you can get from your inner guidance, from your inner being. And they're all the same frequency. They're just different expressions of it, different contexts. But they tell us that the thoughts that we're thinking are really out of sync with what our inner being is thinking. Now, it's not your fault that you're down there. A lot of our upbringing and our experience in life tends to show us that that's the only way to be. The taking on of fear and depression and powerlessness are sometimes survival mechanisms from childhood. There are times you cannot survive in the environment without shutting down and protecting yourself. Otherwise, expressing how you really are and how you really feel will be attacked by somebody, or be suppressed, or be ridiculed. So it's a natural mechanism that we took on to keep ourselves alive. And hey, congratulations, you're here. So it worked. But the thing is that over time, you don't need that anymore. That growing up environment experience is gone. You're an adult now. Or some of you are probably close to being an adult, but you are in the energy field where you can actually start to make changes intentionally, start changing your focus deliberately. And back then you didn't know, and now you have the awareness, and now it's time to start letting go of that stuff. It's time to start dealing with the depression and the despair and the powerlessness which come on. And I still get it sometimes. Not nearly as much, but I'll have a day or so where something triggers me that I haven't dealt with, and let's go down to the bottom. But I've learned now how to get out of the bottom pretty quickly. Sometimes it takes me a little while if it's a particularly deep emotion, but there's some techniques, and there's one I'm going to share here today that will help you get out of this energy field pretty quickly. So back when I was a lot younger, I had a very angry father, explosive at times, and I'm sure you guys can relate. There's probably somebody in your lives who at one point or another tended to have that ability to just dump on you or dump on whoever was nearest, and then you had to protect yourself. And that's usually by emotionally shutting down and not engaging with the person, because you know if you engage with the person, it's going to get even worse. Law of attraction kicks in. And so what do? Well, you just make it through. You just know that at least being in this state of suppression, at least I'm safe. And so safety becomes the primary thing. And I had that. And I can remember even as young as age 3, realizing that it wasn't safe in my environment and beginning the shutdown process. And then as time moved on, and my dad was the primary instigator, as it were. If he couldn't control the situation, if he didn't get what he wanted, then the anger came out. And he could be really nice. I mean, he's genuinely a nice guy when things are going well. And he cares a lot about people, but he's got his own suppressed emotions. And it really wasn't until I started doing this work some years ago that I was able to pull out and start to get my perspective back completely. And now I can look at his situation. I look at his upbringing. He was an only child. He was brought up in a backwater town of upstate New York. And his family was actually fairly wealthy in that environment. And being the only child, everybody was kind of, he was the next generation. And so he had a ton of pressure to conform. He got all the good grades. He went to the right schools. He had to fit in to please mom and dad. And of course, when you have to do that, then you suppress your own guidance system. And that's when the separation occurs. That's when you start moving from alignment at the top, which you're born with, down the emotional scale. The more you're out of alignment with who you really are and what your true goals and passions are, then you slowly drift down and eventually get used to being at the bottom. But he learned at some point that he didn't have to stay down here at the bottom for very long. He would jump up here to rage, which, you might say, well, that's terrible, Kevin. No, it's actually wonderful. He found his way out of the bottom when he could. Not always, but in these situations where he had the opportunity, he was able to actually make that movement. And so the only thing that he didn't know was that he was affecting the rest of us when he would do that. And it would get him attention, and it would get him movement. And the people who are lower on the emotional scale, he would get dominance over them, because the higher you are on the scale, the more power you have, the more influence you have over the people who are around you. So as a kid, you don't know that, though. You don't know what's going on. You just suddenly feel that the only way you're going to get attention is to try to find a way to make him happy. So it was the foundation of my coaching, actually, which not a very healthy way, but it was the best I could do. So at some point, you've had enough pain. You got to do something. Sometimes people don't, and that depression starts to eat them up. They develop life-threatening illnesses, terminal illnesses. If you don't let go of that energy, if you don't come back into alignment, the law of attraction will continue to reflect and bring to you things that match where you're focused. And sometimes it's really hard because it's subconscious. The mind is a powerful, powerful machine. And when we give it sort of authority over us, then it's trying to protect us by thinking the thoughts of fear and safety. And so the thing that the mind doesn't know, the human brain, is that it's still, at the time that it's focusing there, it's also sending out that same energy, and the law of attraction has to reflect it back. It's just what the law of attraction does. It's not there's no judgment about it. It's like gravity. It's just a law of physics. What vibrations go out or what vibrations come back, and everything in our environment is actually that same environment reflected back to us. So we can do something about it. It is about chronic background thoughts that we often have suppressed, and we don't realize they're going on, but it doesn't matter. The law of attraction still picks that up. If there's any energy around them, they're going to reflect back to us that kind of experience. We'll get thoughts at first. After 15 seconds of thinking a low frequency thought or a high frequency one, we'll get the equivalent kind of thoughts back. We'll start to notice more things around us that match that same thought, whether it's joy, love, appreciation, hopefulness, worry, or powerlessness. So we got to break that cycle. And so this is something that you have to do deliberately, because otherwise the triggers, the programs will continue to be triggered. And if you don't catch them as they're happening and do something different, then things are just going to continue the way they are. But the thing is, the frequency can continue the way it is, like feeling powerless, but it becomes amplified in its momentum. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, if you don't break the cycle, then you're going to have to leave the body, because the body can't tolerate that much negative energy for any period of time. And we find ourselves little breaks of time during the time where maybe we just get away from the situation. Maybe we go on a holiday or a vacation. Maybe we learn to meditate. Those are all great ways to break it. But you can also, if they're distraction, that's great. But sooner or later, you got to address the thing that you keep thinking about that's bothering you, that's holding you down. And it's not about what other people are doing. Remember, they're reflecting our beliefs and what we're focused on. So this form of hypervigilance is what I learned is what I had. It's a form of PTSD where you're reactive. You've got to soften that. You've got to take that power back. And so one of the things that I learned to do from my dad indirectly, he was explosive, and that taught me I could be explosive. And I actually got relief when I did that. When I would have a situation that I couldn't control, it wouldn't be around him, of course, because then you'd be attacked because the energy would come back at you. Law of attraction does that. But when I get off by myself, I suddenly get really angry about something. And guess what? I was providing myself relief. I was actually moving myself up the emotional scale. But here's what happens. So you move up the emotional scale, you're giving yourself some relief, you're moving from the powerlessness up to maybe rage or revenge or anger. But then judgment kicks in. Like, what have you been taught about being angry? Well, I was taught that that's a childish emotion. You don't get angry. You don't share that. Geez, you certainly don't take revenge. You don't have hatred. Those are bad emotions, right? That's what we were taught. Well, guess what happens then? If you can't express those emotions, and this doesn't have to be around anybody, by the way, it's about feeling them, then you go from here back down to here. Either guilt, depression, or powerlessness, or anywhere in that range. So you've got to, when that happens, and you can invoke it, we'll do that in a second, you've got to stay here long enough that you get enough momentum and don't talk yourself back down, but let it take hold. And then suddenly you'll start to float up. Because up here at the top is where you want to be. And your inner being is up here all the time. Your inner being is actually at this frequency transmitting it at you. It's trying to get your attention, trying to pull you up. If you just stop struggling, stop thinking about the thing that bothers you, give yourself a break, take the oars out of the boat, out of the water and put them in the boat, you will actually float up naturally. That's where you're being called to be, and you will be there. So it just takes a willingness to do the work and a knowledge of what's actually going on within you. And so that is your guidance system. That's the emotional scale. And again, it's in the Ask and It Is Given book from Abraham. So the technique that I like to use is, first of all, when you're doing this, when you're starting to feel that bubble up in yourself, like you've been in fear or depression, and it's like suddenly it's like, okay, it's time to release this. Or maybe you just have an awareness. It's time for me to do something about this. I can't change my circumstances right now, but I can change the way I'm feeling about them. Okay, so you get off by yourself. Number one, this is not to be done around somebody else, because if you do it, if you express anger and these other emotions down at that level around somebody else, guess what? Law of attraction says they have to be at the same level as you. Anybody you rendezvous with is at the same frequency you're at in the now moment. So that's not going to help you, because you'll attract that. They'll think, oh, you're just being angry at me, and then that's road rage. That's how fights begin. People not managing their vibration. So get away from people. I like to say a safe space, like a bedroom, if you got one. I had a coach that I worked with for quite a while. He would go into his basement, into the corner of the basement, face into the corner, and just scream for a while. And his family knew what he was doing. You can go into your car with the windows rolled up, get away from people. And so once you've isolated yourself, then let that emotion come up. Focus on the thing that's bothering you, the thing that you're depressed about, you're fearful about, or if you feel the anger come up, then focus on that. And let yourself get angry. Let it come up. This is really scary if you've never done it before. I couldn't do this until I took Dale Carnegie training, human relations course. There's a part in it where they encourage this in a very gentle and safe and fun way, actually. Because of what we've been taught that this is a bad emotion, we typically won't address it. It's like, well, I'll just go around it. I'll just focus somewhere else. And that's fine in the moment, but it doesn't deal with the issue that you're still dwelling on that's in the back of your mind. Let it come up. The other thing is that people will say, well, the door will never close. If I open this door, I'm just going to be angry all the time. I'm just going to be throwing things, and I'm going to be breaking things, and I'm going to be yelling at people. And the thing is, no, actually you won't, because it's a transitory thing. Remember, you're being called to be at the top of the emotional scale. And will there be a lot of things down that will come up over time? Yeah, because you got a lot of suppressed emotions, just like I do. But they come up in layers. I guarantee they won't all come up at once and then flood you and then ruin your life. But you do got to make the effort to allow them to come up and move through. And here's my guarantee. If you can do this, if you can sit in this emotion, and it includes yelling and screaming and crying and sobbing and getting whatever out that you can in that moment, don't let your thoughts take away your attention. Stay in the feeling of the emotion. It's so easy because the thoughts are what are creating the emotion to begin with. So we want to use where we're at, what's bothering us as the stimulus to get the emotion started. Okay, I'm really angry now that I'm depressed. I'm really angry that I can never get what I want. I'm really angry at that person because they always treat me like crap and I don't deserve that. Okay, there you go. Get it started. And then let the story go. So once you get the engine started, stop pushing the starter button. Let the thoughts go, because if you let yourself get caught up in the story about why it's that you're in this situation, guess what? You're holding yourself at that frequency. So just let the thoughts start to go and feel that sadness, feel that anger, feel that whatever the emotion is, and see if you can encourage it to get more intense. Catch the thoughts, drop them away, get back into the feeling in the body, the emotions, and let them bubble and churn up and let them come up. And I guarantee it takes about less than 1 minute. If you can stay there without the thoughts, you will create relief. I've watched it so many times in my coaching clients. I help people move through this. I've done it myself, of course, plenty of times. And if you can do that and stay with it until you get that break free and you start floating back up, clarity, first of all, will come very quickly. Because remember, clarity is at the top of the emotional scale. But number two, that layer is gone. It won't come back. Now, there might be different aspects of it that you haven't dealt with that will come back, and you can deal with them in the same way. But this is a way to kickstart yourself out of any depressive situation. Just focus on getting angry and any of the emotions that are in that area and see what happens. If there's any questions around this, feel free to reach out to me anytime. You can connect with me here on Facebook. My website is intuitivecoachkevin.com. That'll link into our personal success programs page. And it doesn't take really, like I said, it's 60 seconds. If you make the concerted effort and do it, then it doesn't take long. Law of attraction will suddenly become your friend because you're moving up the scale. It'll attract things that match higher on the scale, and it goes very quickly. So I know that you can do this. Let this be the first day of the rest of your life. Let this be the day that you step into taking that power back, because you can do it. Everybody is wired for the ability to do this. It's just not common in our society right now. But let's be the leaders with this and show ourselves how powerful we really are. So that's it for now. I've got a lot more to say on this topic because I've got a lot of years of having to deal with it myself that I'd like to share. But if you feel that this video maybe will be helpful for somebody that you know who's in depression, my invitation is first do the work on yourself. Experiment with this and try it out. And then if somebody might be interested, you can ask. I say never try to force something on somebody else because they're already feeling powerless, and that can make them feel worse. But find a way to gently introduce what you're doing to help other people. And feel free to share the video, of course, here on Facebook as much as you'd like if you think it would help. So that's all I got for today. I hope this helps you get out of your lower vibrational state for the moment and maybe help some others along the path. I hope you guys have a great holiday, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.